All right, Manny Hinojosa, candidate for District 1.
Yes, sir.
All right, so first we'll start off by, if you had to talk to a voter and you knocked on their door asking for their vote, tell me some of the things you'd tell them.
Well, the first thing I would say is if we leave things alone the way they are, meaning if we leave the council the way it is, there is a philosophy of never-ending tax hikes because they see the city growing, sprawl growth they call it. They see a constant need to increase quality of life. They see that we have cost of living increases in our salary, most of us, not all of us, by the way. And because of that, they justify a 5 to 10% increase every year in their budget. That's what they try for. They try for 10 or 5 and settle for 1 or 2. And we can't go on like that. We can't go on like that because if the economy doesn't get better, and if we keep growing the way we're growing, and if we don't get efficient, we're going to be part of the statistics that are coming across the nation, which is a financial bankruptcy.
Mr. Hinojosa, do you know the last time that the city council raised taxes?
Yes, this last budget, they went up to 2. I think they tried for 6 and some for 2.
And then prior to this budget, when was the last time they raised taxes?
Prior to this, I think, I know that every year they try, but what they did a year before, I was not even involved in politics up until about 8 months ago. So I cannot give you that record, but I do know they have a philosophy of raising taxes.
Well, you had mentioned that every year they try to raise it.
That's right.
5 to 10%. I'm trying to figure out where you established that figure. If you readily admit you hadn't been following it for the last 8 months.
There's a difference between them trying to do it and accomplishing it. So I'm telling you, they try to do it because that's where they justify their budget.
So point of fact, though, they haven't increased it 5 to 10% every year.
Whether or not they got away with it is a different issue,
okay.
but they do try. That's their philosophy. Growth. It's like an animal that has to feed to grow, and it grows to feed. And that all taxing entities do that. This is happening at the federal government, the state government. The EPISD is about to hit us again with another tax increase. So unless citizens like you and I try to put a little bit of brakes on, we're going to eventually be paying. And by the way, we're almost there. Half of our money goes to the mortgage payment, and the other half of the money goes to property taxes. This is crazy.
Half your money goes to property taxes?
I said it's getting to the point.
It's hyperbole. I mean, that's...
Well, you want to do the math?
It's quite a bit of an exaggeration. Okay. Let's do the math. I mean, if your average, what's your average monthly tax bill come out to?
Okay, right now I pay $550 on my mortgage, and the monthly bill is like $375.
Okay. Most El Pasoans don't pay $550 for their mortgage. They pay significantly more.
Well, we could research. The point is, it's going to grow, and eventually it's going to be equal to or half of our mortgage, and it shouldn't be that way because it also discourages people from coming to live here. Mm-hmm. It discourages business. And I think we should focus instead on being more efficient. We'll talk about later when you want to.
Let's get into that now. Let's talk about how you'd fix it.
Look, here's, and it all goes back to the way of thinking, the mindset and the philosophy. In my home, and I believe in your home, in most American homes, most El Paso homes to be specific, when we get a loss of job or a cut in pay, or we have to go 3 months without a job because we're looking for a different one, we find a way to survive with 5 or 10% less. And the family doesn't really suffer. I mean, they may cut out the Twinkies and the movies and the chocolates.
Cut the cable, stuff like that.
Stuff like that, yeah. What we call luxuries, what the city, by the way, calls quality of life issues. We'll talk about that in a minute. But what I'm trying to say is in every living organism, if I may call a home a living organism, city council a living organism, there is always room. There's always playroom. And it can be translated into maybe asking just a simple memo out to all the employees. Says, we want you to start thinking of this town hall building as your home. When you leave the office, you will turn off the lights. When you make copies, they will be only for business use. Any way that you see, and here's the important one, like the Japanese philosophy is, any way you see your department can function more efficiently, you will bring it to our attention. You will be rewarded for your contribution. And as I said before, I know you don't agree with this, but I have to stand by this. I spent 2 hours here one evening, and there was a meeting up at the 8th floor, and there was lights left on like it doesn't matter. Now, that's petty to somebody, and you'll criticize me for that, but to me, it shows me the mindset, the way people think. Because at my home, I turn out the lights when I go to bed, and
and let's examine that, because that's a pretty common conservative mantra lately is let's tighten our belts, let's live like Joe Citizen would at their home, and let's cut back, and let's get everywhere by cuts. Well, I'll tell you this: the average family, if they found themselves in an economically, difficult time, as everyone pretty much acknowledges we're in, well, they not only make cuts, but they go out and get a second job.
Okay, well,
And what I mean is, they go out and they look for alternative ways to raise money to pay the bills.
well, that's fine, Jaime, but if you carry that logic to its conclusion, it's like Pharaoh telling the slaves to make bricks without straw. I mean, we shouldn't have to go get an extra job.
I'm sorry, qualify that, because I don't understand how that makes sense at all.
Well, because you're saying one of the solutions to higher taxes is for us to work harder. Isn't that what you just said?
Isn't that the American way?
Well, it's the American way to have freedom.
Isn't that a conservative principle, though, that those that work hardest get rewarded?
It is.
Is that not?
It is an American way to work hard, but it's not the way of freedom for me to go get a second job so I can please my city council because they want to have quality of life issues that go beyond.
Okay, that's not what I said at all. In fact, you're mischaracterizing completely what I said. What I said was that most Americans, if they find themselves in economically tough times, and you were comparing city government to a family, well, if most families, and myself included, if I was in an economically difficult situation, I'd go out and get another job, or I'd have my spouse go out and work to increase income. Well, if you look at the city the same way, would you not examine other ways of raising income to help pay those bills?
Okay, now I understand what you mean. You're applying that principle to city council trying to promote business growth and employment. Yes, I agree with you. We should look, and that takes us to the city manager. A lot of people are asking me, what would you do to increase business growth and the economy and so forth? And I find that question very interesting because we have someone that gets about $500,000. I'm referring to the city manager and her team. Mm-hmm. $500,000 más o menos.
You're talking about what, 11 people in her staff?
Well, yeah, you do the math. That's why I say más.
Well, that's what I'm saying. So if you do $500,000 divided by 11, they're making about $50,000.
Well, whatever they're making? Isn't the city manager making $250,000?
Oh, she lives very well.
So let's say
she certainly isn't like you and I and have to make cuts.
Let's say that there's a good chunk of money going to experts that have been helping us do that for 6 years now. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting that they come to a newbie, a rookie, asking him, what would you do? You've had the benefit of experts for 6 years that are doing that to El Paso. Isn't that enough? They're already...
I don't understand when they come to a newbie asking what they would do.
There's people are asking me what I would do.
Well, because you're a candidate. You're putting yourself up for public...
I understand that, but I am shifting the focus on the experts that we have. They're either doing a good job, in which case I will consult with them, or they're doing a bad job, in which I need to run for city manager.
Okay, so we've established that you don't like the city manager.
No, we have not established that. We've established that if people are asking me about growth while they have an expert, there's something wrong with the communication between the expert and the people.
No, that's false. I mean, if you're applying for the position, if you're applying for a job, people are going to ask you, well, what is your experience in, say you want to be, the head of the widget department. Well, people are going to ask you, what are your experience in widgets? If you are running for city council, people rightfully will ask you, well, what is your plan? What is it you're going to do differently?
Well, I will rely on what El Paso has been relying for the last 4 to 6 years, and that is the experts, the city manager and her experts that have already got downtown revitalization, the 360 program where they get tax rebates, and at the end of the year they get a rebate or whatever. So I would rely on them first. What I think is not happening to a fuller extent is that enough of it, in other words, enough of that effort going in there. And with property taxes the way they are, I think it's also discouraging people from coming to live here.
Do you support tax abatements to attract business to El Paso?
Yes, sir. And as a matter of fact, not only that, but let me say two qualifications. Number one, but El Paso business first. In other words, helping the El Paso businesses grow first. Secondly, the out-of-town businesses, I wouldn't give them this 360 where they wait, you have to pay your taxes and then a year later you get the money back. Why would you do that? I wouldn't take that deal, would you? If I can go to another city and get a tax break at the beginning, why would I wait a year? I don't think that's enough.
Because I understand that concern, and I think if you're asking me, I think the answer is, well, you want to have some assurances that you're not going to get screwed in the deal, and they're not going to just take your money and run.
Well, the assurances can be on a lien on their business or something, but if it was enough, it would be working. But because it's not working sufficiently, then that incentive is not enough and needs to be revisited.
So, Manny, when you say that you want to help El Paso businesses first, what does that look like?
One thing that comes to my mind immediately, and I don't want to offend anyone, but I have to be honest, is the city inspector mentality. Let me explain what I mean. I have been a businessman. I used to have a car lot at the corner of Montana and McRae. I've had my own apartment complex. I've had my own auto shop repair there also in McRae, Montana. And one thing that I noticed about the city inspectors is that they need to understand, I wish I had brought it with me, but there's the 10 commandments of good service. And one of those commandments is to not play the difficult game with, you didn't get it right the first time, I'll see you tomorrow. But rather to be more specific, because you and I know, and I know you listened to this answer before, when there are regulations governing the size of a pipe, for example, a plastic pipe can come in 10 different forms and shapes. And when a city inspector will not take the time to say, this is what the city code calls for, but instead says, that doesn't work, I'll have to come back. That not only discourages the builder, it costs the taxpayers money. It happened to me. It happened to me when I was painting a sign. Yep. And all I wanted to do...
You were trimming some bushes as well, right?
Oh, you heard about that?
Yeah, I heard about that.
I have some 5-foot palm trees at my house. I trimmed them immediately when he told me. He made a U-turn and saw me. He saw me. I just finished trimming them. And he still mailed me a letter reminding me that he told me to trim my bushes. I mean, where is the money there? Where's the savings there? Where's the mentality of wanting to be efficient there?
Okay, so then here's the other side of that efficiency thing, because so far what you've talked about, I mean, I don't see where anything's increased being efficient, because that same time that you're talking about is a waste of time to business owners. It's a waste of time to taxpayers who have to sit there and pay a city employee to educate a businessman on what they need to do in terms of code, when they should have done their due diligence in the beginning, because any savvy business person will do due diligence before they start and open a business and make sure that they, you know, have their ducks in a row before they do that. And so don't you feel like that's an equal amount of waste of taxpayer money to pay them to educate a business owner who is, you know, trying to profit off of an endeavor?
Jaime, that would be the case if we're talking about a school or taking time out to give an orientation or presentation. I'm talking about simple communication skills. I'm talking about a new, especially a person who is new at say a new plumber or plumbing business that just got started, and he reads and you and I know what equivocation means. You know that a word can have 5 meanings when you look it up in the dictionary. So when a new plumber, for example, is redoing, which they're doing all over the city right now, is redoing a pipeline, and he sees on the city's code book that it has to have a so-and-so pipe, but it has to be, when you go to Home Depot, you know, when you go buy one pipe, you got a choice of 10 of them. Okay, so the education that I'm talking about that doesn't cost any money is actually communication skills, where it says, this is what the city calls for. There is a picture of one right here, or it has to have an ID of so-and-so and an OD, outside diameter of so-and-so. That takes what, 10 seconds? It has to do with the spirit of wanting to help the builder, a spirit, we call it good faith, approaching the situation with good faith. When I had my apartments, Jaime, just a real
Which is entirely subjective. I mean, anytime somebody doesn't get their way, they can turn around and say, well, it wasn't in good faith.
You know, it's not subjective when you have builders lining up one after the other telling you that the inspectors don't work with them. You know, if we interview enough, you pick any 10 builders, any 10 plumbers at your choice at random, and you ask them if they feel that the inspectors are treating them in good faith. You know, and that's where I found out. When I had my apartments, there was one lady who called in with a complaint about me not having the special outlets by the kitchen. You have to have these safety outlets. Well, when they came in, instead of asking me to do, say, one building at a time or one apartment per week, they asked me to do the whole section, which almost broke me. You know, if you really want to work with business, you don't put such a financial burden on a grandfathered building, by the way. You don't put such a burden on them that you discourage and or kill their business. Country Club Road, when they tore up Country Club Road, I talked to Hello Pizza over there. He's a friend of mine. And he says, Manny, not only did they not finish the road on time to do that turnaround at Westway and Coronado, Country Club rather, but they had to come back and redo it. This is unacceptable. This is unacceptable. And whoever's doing those jobs for the city should be held accountable. There should be a guarantee in writing. These computer chips they're going to put on the trash cans, in our trash cans, I want to see the contract where they say, if it doesn't save you money, you get your money back. That's what you would do as a private citizen, wouldn't you? I know I would. If somebody's going to sell me a bill of goods, I want to see what the guarantee is in writing. And that's what taking care of the taxpayers' money is all about.
So, what do you think, and you were interviewed recently and you talked about a lot of things in that interview, and it became a little contentious. the interview.
I want to apologize
What
for
would
that.
you do differently with that?
Okay,
interview?
yes, thank you, Jaime. And you know, Jaime, you and I have been at odds, but I'm really growing to respect you more and more because you're taking this attitude with me. What happened is I was interviewed by someone who I shall not name.